now listening to the Schuster Express on 1252 Sports Chicago. And now for your host, David Schuster.
Hello, and welcome back to the Schuster Express. I'm David Schuster. I've been on a slight hiatus for a little bit, but we're back right now. And like Arnold Schwarzenegger said in the movie Terminator, at least I think he did, I'm back. So let's get right to it. Today on the show, I have Mr. Harry Berg, who will be on here in just a little bit. He, of course, is also from 1252 Sports. He will join us in just a little bit, as I mentioned. Harry has a show here on 1252. It's every Friday night, and it's called The Over Under with Harry the Greek. And yes, Harry definitely knows his way around wagering. All right, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're certainly not going to talk about the Bears losing a game or winning a game or even playing a game, because this was their bye week. And a lot of people's eyes, that is a win for most Bear fans, because, I was talking to some people earlier today. It sort of keeps your blood pressure a little bit further down on a day when the Bears don't play, because quite often, more often than not, you're screaming at your TV, you're screaming at Matt Nagy, you're screaming at, everybody, taking it out on people when the Bears play a stupid game, which more often than not they do. And then there's the talk shows. And I was involved with the post-game talk show once upon a time with Doug Buffone and Ed Obradovich. And let me tell you, if I ever write a book, and I probably won't, that'll be about 3 chapters in the book, because not only doing the show with those guys, but watching the game with them. I mean, I can numerous times, and this had to be road games because I was at the home games, but when the Bears were on the road, I would watch the game in the studio with those guys, and then we would go on the air after the fact. But during the game, and especially if they played stupid, which often they did, things would be flying around the room. And I'm not just talking about like erasers or chalk or something like that. I'm talking about big, heavy things that were flying around the room. And there were a few times I had to duck not to get hit by something that either Doug or Ed were throwing around the room, because they were so pissed off at how the Bears were playing. So again, with the fact that the Bears not playing today actually kept a lot of people, including mine, blood pressure a little bit further down today. But we'll certainly take a look around the NFL. We'll also talk about the Bulls. The Bulls are currently set to tip off in a game out in Los Angeles. It's really weird when they play the Clippers tonight and the Lakers tomorrow night, back-to-back games in the same building. The Clippers are going to be building a new building very shortly, but for right now, they're still sharing the Staples Center out in Los Angeles. So back-to-back games, we're going to talk about the Bulls. We're going to talk about the Cubs. We're going to talk about the White Sox. I mean, it's now the quote-unquote off season. I haven't talked to you since the Braves won the World Series. We can get into that if we want to as well. But the Cubs and the White Sox have some work both to do. The White Sox, certainly made the playoffs, but they bowed out quickly. Their pitching wasn't up to snuff. The Cubs, say they're going to spend a lot of money. I'll believe it when I see it. So we'll talk about both those teams. We'll even talk about if there's even going to be a start of a baseball season, because the more and more I hear and the more I read, it's so acrimonious between the Players Association and the owners. And someone even said today it's going to be 2.5 months of hell starting December 1st, when the current basic contract agreement ends, before they get to a new one. So that'll take you probably up until spring training, and then we'll see if there's even a spring training, and then we'll see if there's a baseball season. There have been 3 work stoppages over the last, 30 some odd years. And I've been part of all of them, and they're just dreadful. So hopefully that won't happen. We'll do our walk down memory lane segment. I have a good one today to talk with Harry about. And at the end of today's podcast, like I do with all my guests, we'll do Stump, and it'll be today's Stump the Harry. So I have some good questions. So let's bring in Harry Berg right now. He's sitting in the green room, and Harry's going to join us right now as he comes up on the screen. There he is.
Hey.
There's Harry the Greek. Hey, Harry, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing me on. Boy, I'll tell you what, a lot of exciting football today.
There was, and why don't we start right there, even before we get into the Bears, because, and you and I talked even before we started recording this. And by the way, this is Harry. Harry does, the Over Under show on Friday night. He's a incredibly wagerer. I use that, or as my friend Andy Roth says, professional investor. That's how he uses the terminology. But you know your way around the wagering business, so to speak. So we'll get into that as well. And of course, the Bears. But let's start with the NFL today, Harry. Again, some upsets that, maybe the novices didn't feel like they were coming. I mean, did anybody really think, even though Arizona was playing without their starting quarterback, that they would be waxed like they were by Carolina? Did anybody think that Tampa Bay, though they might thought that they might not cover, did they think that they would lose to Washington, which they did? And there have been so many upsets in the NFL over the last bunch of weeks. There are no great teams. That's what I want to start off with. There are no great teams in the NFL, at least in my opinion.
Well, that's a really good point, David, because, the earlier in the year, we said Buffalo wasn't as good as what they, showed from the previous year. They were kind of regressing, and all of a sudden they started to ascend. They kind of peaked, and now they're back to playing mediocre football after getting beat last week with a very big upset. And this
Yeah.
week they just play incredible football. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how about them? Favorite to go back to the Super Bowl again. Injury bugs getting to them, not looking very good, very pedestrian. Loses to a third string quarterback with New Orleans. Then they get beat today in Washington, which, by the way, I did pick on the spread. Didn't think Tampa was going to lose, but I didn't think they were going to cover. The Detroit Lions, I can't believe it. They tied. They found a way not to win, but yet not to lose. They covered. How about Denver last week? I picked that game on the money line against the Dallas Cowboys. It's going to be a very interesting season, David, because there's no clear-cut winner right now. It's whoever gets hot, i.e., like what the Buccaneers did when they got into the playoffs, when they squeaked by the Washington football team, and I use that loosely. When they squeaked by the Washington football team in the wild card, then they decided to roll through the playoffs and went ahead and won. Just depends who's going to get hot.
Yeah, it depends who gets hot, at the right time of the year, obviously. And that's what Tampa Bay did last year, by the way. I remember they came in here, it was a Sunday night game, and they laid an egg. And that's when Tom Brady forgot how many downs there were, yada, yada. That's an old story at this point. Then they got hot, and they went on, and they ran the table pretty much from there. This year, I don't know who's going to do it. I mean, Tennessee right now is the quote-unquote top seed in the AFC at 8-2, but they're playing without their starting running back, Derrick Henry. And I go back, I can't remember which quote unquote expert on one of the NFL shows on Sunday said, well, Tennessee's not going to win any more games because their number one running back is not going to play the rest of the season. Well, guess what? They've won 2 games ever since then. And right now they're the number 1 seed. I don't think that's going to stay, to be honest with you. So, I mean, even though these guys are affiliated, they're former players, they're former coaches, they don't know squat more than you and I. That's just, I see that every week.
No, I have to agree with you. In Tennessee, that's another team. You didn't know what you were going to get the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, and all of a sudden, bing, bing, the light bulb came on. Look, Derrick Henry is arguably the hardest guy to tackle in the entire National Football League. He's like trying to tackle a Volkswagen. Okay? Seriously. I mean, let's be honest. The guy weighs as much as a Volkswagen. He hits you with that kind of power. They're still winning. Okay, and they're beating really good football teams, and they're beating them convincingly, okay, with the exception against New Orleans. But hey, don't discount New Orleans here. Third string quarterback, no Alvin Kamara, but they're still playing defense. And you know what? I'm tired of people saying, well, they haven't won against anybody. They can only win against the people that are on the schedule that they currently have. You know what I mean by that, right, David?
Yeah, and their third string quarterback is Simeon down there, of course, and he was the quarterback at Northwestern here, and I covered all those games when he was playing collegiately in the Big Ten. So I'm well familiar. He's better than most people think he is. The rest around the NFL, Green Bay's 8-2. I mean, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, can you say he was a little rusty today, or maybe his head was still filled with whatever horse thing that was injected him? Who knows? But
he was immunized.
Yeah, immunized. Okay, whatever. I don't really want to get into that but I mean, Green Bay's 8-2, but they you're going to have to if they end up having the best record in the NFC, you're going to have to go through Green Bay. Up in Green Bay, that's no easy chore. I mean, it was cold enough there today at the end of in the middle of November. Just think what it's going to be like And by the way, the NFL season the last 2 games are in January. So the playoffs, and if they get a number 1 seed, you're not playing in Green Bay until like the 3rd week in January. God knows how awful it's going to be up there then. But there are no great shakes either, Harry. Dallas, is up and down. I mean, today they waxed the hell out of somebody. I can't even remember who it was. Arizona was 8-1 coming into today, and they were destroyed today. So again, not only from a wagering standpoint, Harry, because you would certainly know better than I on that subject, but from an NFL fan standpoint, you just don't know week to week. It is a week-to-week league. I've heard that moniker for a long time. This time around, I think it's absolutely true.
I honestly believe, and I'm going to go full screen when I say this, the best team in the National Football League right now, and they play tomorrow, are the Rams, bar none. They got Odell Beckham Jr., and I honestly think he was a cancer, just like personally what Antonio Brown was going to be when he went to Tampa last year. I was the person that went, no, don't do that. Let me tell you something. They haven't had Antonio Brown now for a couple of games, and it has really shown. Hey, Woods just went down in the Rams, so they're really going to need somebody, and Odell's going to fit it. With Matthew Stafford and picking up the big defensive end and having a running game, and by the way, their defense hasn't even hit the pedal yet because they are mediocre at best right now. And I'm talking about Aaron Donald and company that are sitting back there. They're ranked middle to the bottom part of the league on defense. They haven't even peaked, and they're winning. That's a dangerous team, David.
Potentially, the answer to that is yes, they are. They picked up the kid, and not that he's not a kid anymore, from Denver. So obviously now they got 2 studs on their defense along with all the other players. And like you said, they just picked up Beckham, although they lost Woods, and Woods was very, very productive. Stafford might end up being the MVP, pending on these last 8 weeks of the season. Time will tell, of course. But I'm going to state it again because I've seen the Rams play awful football too, like you have as well. There are no great teams in the NFL. We'll see what happens in the last 8 weeks of the season. Now, I can tell you for fact, a team that is not great is the one right here in Chicago. And Harry, by the way, in his kitchen, by the way, I can see, with probably your pretty wife in the background skirting around there. God bless her. Yeah. Harry is in Tampa. Harry told me that it was 79 degrees today at kickoff, whereas it was probably 39 degrees here in Chicago. No kickoff today, by the way. So Harry, has the luxury of being in the warmth while we're here in the cold in Chicago.
Well, that's a great point. I still have a condo down there in the South Side in Palos Hills. Still love my roots up there. And I mean, everybody knows that I'm a huge Sox fan and a huge Bears fan and a Bulls fan and a Blackhawk fan. But anyway, being down here in the west coast of Florida, I'm relatively close. I'm just west of Tampa. And I can't wait, David, because every time I join your show, especially if it's during the day or if I'm doing the over-under, it'll be poolside outside, like December, even January, just to let you know. And you'll see the palm trees out there. And of course, I'm taking in all welcome guests. Oh, and by the way, I didn't tell everybody, you got to like this channel. You have to subscribe and put this on your timeline. If you have a question or comment for Mr. Schuster, please go ahead and post it. And they're going to go ahead and read it live in the air as I'm going to present it right now for David. There you go, David. It says Buffalo has a great defense and a very good offense. Their running game showed up today for the first time all year. Perfect timing considering you need a good running game in a poor, blustery weather. Can't throw it every play. What do you think, David?
Well, of course, that is, the MO for football, especially as you get into December and hopefully even into January, especially if you're playing in cold weather cities. Again, Buffalo has been up and down too. Buffalo's got a record as of today. I think they're 6-3. They're leading their division, if I'm not mistaken. And they'll have a showdown eventually with New England, who looked pretty good today. We were talking about this even before we started recording, Harry. I turned on the Cleveland New England game. Cleveland gets the ball and they march down the field like a hot knife through butter. And then they have an early 7-0 lead. Before you know it, they're losing 21-7, and they lost 40-something to 7.
Yeah.
So, again, it's very, very unpredictable. Yes, you have to have a running attack. I wanted to circle back, though, to the Bears. They didn't win today. They didn't lose. They saved a lot of people's blood pressure today, as I mentioned. but they're not going anywhere. They're 3-6. Baltimore's coming in here next Sunday, a week from today. Baltimore is going to be in a pissed off mood, especially Lamar Jackson. He was awful in this game on Thursday night. They have more time to prepare for this game upcoming. Baltimore needs to get back, rolling like they were earlier in the season. So I'm going to chalk that up as a loss for the Bears. And by the way, they start off, and I'm sure you already know this, Harry. Baltimore's a 5.5-point favorite. That's
Yep.
already on the board.
Yep. And again, and people that are out there, and I'm not trying to make this a gambling show, but there's an old rule of thumb. You always want to try to bet home dogs, especially in baseball. Okay, but that's for another time. Okay, because in football, home dogs, there's something to say about that 12th man. There's something to say about being on the road. But going back to what you're talking about, Chicago, they're not as bad as everybody thinks they are. Okay, they're getting there, and that offensive line is going to get a lot healthier as the season goes on. It's going to get a little bit better. Defensively, they're starting to get it back together. You should have Khalil Mack. You should have Akeem Hicks. Eddie Goldman's going to be playing a little bit better. I don't care if Eddie Jackson's going to be playing or not because he can't tackle anybody anyway. And Baltimore has been getting diced up against running quarterbacks, and they're really suspect because of the safety play hasn't been that well, and Justin Fields could have a big game.
He
I'll
could.
give more insight on that one. I
He
don't see
could.
the Bears beating them either, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be a better game than a lot of people think it's going to be.
Well, we'll see. I'm not a Bear, and I'm not suggesting that you're a Bear apologist, but I'm definitely not one. They're 3-6, and they've earned all 6 of those losses, to be honest with you. So they got Baltimore upcoming. Then they're at Detroit on a Thanksgiving.
That's a win.
Maybe. I'll just say maybe. Could end up in a tie, just like Detroit was today. And by the way, if you have one of those pools where you have to have a guaranteed winner, okay,
The survivor, yeah,
survivor pool, and you bet Pittsburgh today, you're out, right? They didn't win.
I believe you are out if you did play Pittsburgh because I don't think a push is allowed. You have to have a decisive winner. Good. That's a good question, though.
Well, we'll try and investigate that even before the show is over. But I imagine maybe the survivor pool ended today for a lot of people because I'm sure everybody has gone against Detroit because they haven't won a game yet. Something tells me their first win is going to come on Thanksgiving against the Bears. All right, then after that, let's see. They got Arizona here. Again, Arizona up and down, but if Murray is back by that point, that's a tough guy to beat. They're at Green Bay. That's a loss. They got Minnesota here. That's a Monday night game. Then they're at Seattle. They got the Giants here. Then they finish up the season at Minnesota. Minnesota's no great shakes either. I see the Bears winning 2 more games, Harry. I'll be honest with you. I think when it's all said and done, they'll finish at 5-12.
You know, it's really funny that you said that. That's a very strong possibility. I have them winning possibly a total of 7 games. I did see something in this past game. You made a comment that Chicago, you're not a Bears apologist, and nor am I. And I wouldn't say they deserved every one of those losses. Could they have been a little bit more disciplined against Pittsburgh? I honestly think that, look, I don't want to sound like a homer. They should have won that game against Pittsburgh. I'm sorry. They
Okay.
really should have.
You're saying, and I understand. And I was at the Bulls game that night, so I didn't see the first half when a lot of the calls were apparently very egregious against the Bears. I did turn on the game after the Bulls game ended from the United Center, and from the middle of the third quarter on, it actually was pretty exciting, back and forth both ways. And yes, they could have won. Matt Nagy, calling a timeout when he did. McVay is a great coach. Thank you, Facebook user, whoever that is. Calling that timeout, that was another stupid thing on his part. Where I really wanted to go with the Bears more than anything else, Harry, and let's just say they finish 5-12, or even if they get to 6-11, or even 7-10, okay, which, by the way, that's what I predicted when the season started. I say you make the change, okay? I don't know what this hierarchy is going to do. They never do anything in the season. We all know that. Their general manager, Ryan Pace, I think is over his skis. I think he's been ever since he took the job. Actually, I blame him more than I do the coach, Matt Nagy. But I just think both these guys got to go. That's just my opinion.
Wow. That's strong because you have the exact same opinion as I have, and people want to crucify me and put me up on a cross. How can you say that? Look, man, Matt Nagy, only coaches what he has in front of him. I don't agree with his scheme. But then again, Ryan Pace, some of the decisions that he has made as a general manager for this organization has been atrocious, absolutely atrocious. And I'm not going to try to go down that rabbit hole. But my lord, I mean, let me put it to you this way: Matt Nagy is not as bad of a coach as people think. If he could just check his ego at the door and actually find an offensive coordinator, not him, but an OC, I think this team would be all right. Matt Nagy could be a good leader and he has to hold his people accountable. He doesn't need to be the offensive coordinator. How do you feel about
No,
that?
no, you're right about that. And it's seemingly each and every time where he hands off the play calling ability to somebody else, whether it's Laser or somebody else, they seem to play better. But for whatever reason, it keeps coming back to him where he calls the plays. And inevitably, seemingly, his game calling plays is pretty awful. You're right. Ryan Pace gives him the team. Matt Nagy coaches what he has. Ryan Pace has first of all, you can pay off the national debt with all the money that Ryan Pace has given to quarterbacks who have done nothing for this franchise ever since he came here. I mean, the list is endless, and all the money is not endless. He also drafted an offensive lineman. What was it in the second round, where the guy had back problems in college and had surgery even before the season started?
Yeah,
No other team.
Tevin Jenkins.
Kevin Jenkins, who may or may not be back this season. I think he started to get on the practice field at Hallisall over the last week or so. Barham might be inserted more and more. The offensive line, Harry, which is obviously key on any team, there's potential there. And they have to add a couple of more new names down the road. There's potential. If that offensive line gels over the next year or two, and Justin Fields continues an upward progression, and the health of the wide receivers, although I have no idea, they've basically neutered Allen Robinson. I don't understand that at all.
I don't think he has that chemistry. Let me interject there for a second. I don't think he
Possibly
has
so.
that. I don't think he's had that chemistry yet. And I'm going to say this again, like I did when you were on my show on a different platform when we were talking about this, that I thought he may actually struggle a little bit because of the fact that he's not as good as Andy Dalton at this point of his career. I mean, Justin Fields is the future for this organization, but he's still a little bit slow in the pocket, delivering the football. I mean, he has better legs. When Dalton was playing and you seeing it, it was 1, 2, 3, bang. I mean, the receiver wasn't even out of his break, not even going into the break, and the ball was getting on him. And that's what the difference is. But, as time goes on, you're going to see a lot more from Allen Robinson because they have forced Justin Fields into this. They're either going to make this young man or they are going to break this young man.
All right. So again, if the offensive line gels, and I don't think it's going to be this season, but over the next year or two, and Fields continues his upward progression, and they have health across the board with wide receivers, and whether it's David Montgomery, I like Khalil Herbert. I really do. I see something in this guy. He's fast. He's tough. I like him a lot. So potentially offensively, they might be on an upward progression, if not the rest of the season, maybe in the near future, starting next season. The defense, though, Harry, though it was considered to be a strong point, they've had injuries, no ifs, ands, or buts. Mack has been injured. Now he's missed the last couple of games. Hicks has missed a couple of games with the groin injury. How long can that stay? Them staying healthy or them staying even good. I mean, there's a very short shelf life. This is another thing I've learned about the NFL. I'm not the all-time savant of pro football, but the shelf life, not only of the player, but of a team is very short. And I was thinking this today as I'm watching Seattle do absolutely nothing today against Green Bay. Remember when they won the Super Bowl not that far back?
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
you thought, oh my God, this team defensively is unbelievable. They have Russell Wilson. They're going to be a dynasty. Okay, boom, they were out of the picture almost the next year, if not 2 years after that. Take a look at other teams. You're really on top. It's so hard to be good in the NFL for an extended period of time. That's why Tom Brady is really amazing. How many times he's won a Super Bowl, which is now 7. That, most of that obviously in New England. It's just very hard. Even Kansas City. You look at Kansas City when they won. I go, oh my God, this team is just like automatic. They're like a pinball machine on tilt. Not this season, for the most part.
Well,
Why?
that started mid-year last year.
I
And I
know.
even made that comment and said, this team's starting to look a little bit more pedestrian like,
Yeah.
you know, and again, there was tape out on, I hate to use this terminology, but everybody calls Patrick Mahomes you know, the baby goat. I call him a billy goat because, honestly, I mean, he runs to his right 85% of his times. And over 20% of the times when he's rolling to his right, he's throwing across his body. That field gets shorter. Defenses are just having fun with him. And that's why they have the worst turnover differential in football. And that's why Kansas City may not make the playoffs this year, in my opinion. By
I
the way,
think,
there's another comment here for you. That's
yes.
from Pig Dog Video 2001. Shu and Harry, do you think the Steelers tying Detroit effectively ended their season today? What do you think?
I got to take a look. Help me out with the division standings there.
Well, right now, I think they're all tied
Sure.
in the North over there. It's pretty tough. I mean, look,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's really not as good as they are. And
No, they're not.
Detroit's season ended the first game of the season.
Doesn't seem to make a difference who coaches, who's the general manager there, who's the players. It just doesn't seem to matter. They are a woeful, woeful organization. Woeful organization. But again, it's anybody's game the rest of the season in the NFL. I mean, to predict who's the two teams that are going to represent the AFC and the NFC, it's almost impossible.
My apologies, by the way. Pittsburgh is a full game behind them. Baltimore 6-3. Pittsburgh's 5-3-1. I kept forgetting about the bye week. Cincinnati's 5-4, and Cleveland, believe it or not, is 5-5.
Yeah, that's a very even division, obviously. Anyway, the point I was trying to make about the Bears, Ryan Pace just doesn't do it for me, and I'm not alone in that. Most of the fan base here in Chicago has seen enough of him. Again, whether his draft picks overall or paying money for quarterbacks, I mean, they lucked into Justin Fields. Ultimately, I don't know how good he's going to be. Time will tell, and I think there's a pretty good chance that he could be a really good quarterback. But they lucked into him. I mean, other teams bypassed him, and so he fell to number 11, and they had to take him, obviously, because they didn't have anybody else. So we'll see, but I'm just not a Ryan Pace fan. I'm just not.
No, I have to agree with you. I think Ryan Pace needs to go bye-bye personally. I just don't know who they're going to get from here. And you know what? I think 2/3 of the general managers in football sink anyway, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because it's so difficult, so difficult to to strike gold in the first round. I mean, most first round draft picks don't make it. You have another comment from Pig Dog Video 2001. It says, "Shu, can you tell us the origin of the Paxson Christmas Day interview? How did you get him to agree to come on during the holiday, or was it taped beforehand?" Wow.
Only one time was it taped because he had a family function. I think I had him on 6 or 7 straight years. I can't remember how many it was, but more often than not, I've had a long relationship with John Paxson dating back to his playing days. And he was always one of my go-to guys to go to because he was so affable, easy to talk to. And I would ask him, I said, John, I'm doing the show because I was known as Mr. Holiday at the Score because I would always host the shows on all the holidays, whether it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Day, what have you, Arbor Day. And so have the executive vice president of the Chicago Bulls on, and John was always agreeable. I said, John, listen, if you want to have a few eggnogs even before you come on and load them up with something, please do it. It might sound even better. And he probably was a couple of times, but just a good guy. Didn't really have the overall success that the fan base wanted him to have, but he's always been a good friend of mine, and I'll always appreciate him doing that. And again, only one time did we have to tape it because he had a family function that he just wasn't going to do from a different locale. But more often than not, he was roasting the chestnuts, drinking something, and coming on with me on Christmas morning.
Wow, that's great. That was a great question, Pig Dog. Like we said, if you have a question or comment for David Schuster, go ahead and post it. I'll read it live on the air. He can answer your question. Hell, it might even give us a different subject to even talk about.
Yeah. Well, speaking of different subjects, let's switch because you said, we'll talk baseball now.
Sure.
And hopefully there will be a baseball season. I think we talked about a little earlier also that it's very acrimonious between the owners and the players right now. And it sounds fairly dire, to be honest with you. The basic contract agreement between the two sides, it comes up on December 1st, which is obviously right around the corner. And after that, they have to negotiate a new deal, or there might be a work stoppage. And right now, people are very pessimistic, and there's always a big chasm between the two sides. So we'll see what happens. Knock on wood, they will be spring training and regular season, yada, yada. But the White Sox, you haven't talked to Harry since the White Sox unfortunately folded the tent in the postseason and went down pretty quickly, unfortunately, against Houston. Their pitching staff, which was a strong point for the most part in the regular season, it sort of folded in the postseason. None of the pitchers really pitched well. Ironically, the only pitcher who pitched well was the one who criticized Houston, was Tepera. That was ironic. But the rest of them didn't. Carlos Rodon is going to be a free agent. I'm 99.99% sure he's going somewhere else. They just don't have room for him, and they're not going to spend the money on him. He'll get it from somebody else. So Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, Dylan Cease, Dallas Keuchel, and Michael Kopech will be your starters next year. Kopech going into the rotation. They have a hole at second base. There's some potential free agents, Marcus Semien being one of them. Craig Kimbrell is obviously trade bait. He's not going to be on the White Sox. I'm 99% sure on that one as well. What are your overall thoughts? And also right field, Harry. They have a hole there. I'm going to predict that Gavin Sheets not only will be their starting right fielder, but will man the position and man it very well. I really like him.
I love Gavin Sheets, David. And that was great. That's a lot to answer here, so I'm going to really try to go down the list for you. Gavin Sheets, I think, could be a really good addition. They're not going to have to spend the money there, because if that does pan out, now they have millions of dollars to be able to invest. I wasn't too disappointed on what happened when they got Hernandez. I was disappointed when they let Nick Mangier go gold, and I definitely think the Cubs got the better end of this deal. But then again, the score is tied 1-1. Okay, let's talk about what happened with Jose Quintana.
Right.
Okay, but Nick Mangier, in my opinion, is going to be one of the best second basemen in baseball, because of the fact that he doesn't strike out a lot. He's not a liability in the field, contrary to what people believe. But yes, it would be nice to see them get an upgrade at second base. But as far as pitching's concerned, look, if he didn't get hurt this year, okay, if he did not get hurt, you know who I'm talking about. The kid's a stud left-handed pitcher. And I don't want to say his name because I'd love to see the White Sox keep him. But you're right, they're not going to be able to sign him again. But had he not got hurt, he could have been eligible for Cy Young. I'm telling you, he had that kind of year.
Well, you're talking about Carlos Rodon, and by the way,
you're not supposed to say that.
Why not? I can't be fined for tampering.
I know, but you know what their biggest need is, in my opinion? A catcher. I'm sorry, Yasmani Grandal is a decent stick. He doesn't hit for average. So what? He walks all the time. Let me repeat it. He walks all the time. He couldn't throw you out from first to second on a steal, and he can't really call that. Well, he calls a good game. He's just not a very good defensive catcher.
Yeah,
and shame on the White Sox for letting, Josh McCann leave. I'm sorry. The guy had the best year of his career the year that they got rid of him, and they really didn't get anything for him.
No,
in my
didn't.
opinion, Sebi Zavala, he's a good catcher, but he's not the answer right now. He's 3-4. He's still 3-4 years away from being what he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Grandal, had some long home runs and key times during the regular season, but he had a lot of pass balls. He's seemingly a defensive liability, which is a scary proposition. And if you're going to have a backup catcher, you don't normally have a defensive replacement in the 7th, 8th, or 9th innings at the catcher's position. But if ever there was a catcher to do that with, it would be Grandal, to be honest with you, because he is pretty scary in those kind of situations. I do believe that Craig Kimbrell will honestly bring you back. If you can't sign, like, let's say, a Semien, who's also going to command a lot of money, then maybe Kimbrell gets you a second baseman in trade. I don't know.
He could, but the only thing about Kimbrell, look, he's really good in the National League. He has not been a good closer in the American League. Everybody's like, well, it's because he was pitching in the 7th and 8th. Hogwash. Trust me, he doesn't pitch as well in the American League for some reason. That's why Boston, they parted ways with him, and then he reinvented his career back in Chicago when he went to the Cubs. Look, They didn't lose because of Kimbrel. The entire pitching staff really wasn't
Yeah.
pitching that well. But you know what the real bottom line was? And this is just from my own opinion. And I said I didn't have them really getting past Houston. I really wanted them to. My heart wanted them to. They were a year away. That team wasn't cohesive enough. They didn't play together enough. When you lost Luis Robert early in the season, Eloy Jimenez on that freak play was dislocating his shoulder. The ups and downs with Adam Eaton the second time around. I mean, in the constant rotation of players. Look, man, they won a lot of ball games with a AAA team. Let's just call it what it is. And in the final month of the season, they finally had their team back where they were starting to play together. I'm sorry. It's this team will be a lot scarier. They don't get hurt next year. They will go to the World Series this year.
All right.
Never know.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, they weren't really good in the whole second half of the season. I mean,
No.
they built up a big lead in a bad division.
Yep.
The knock against them was that for the most part they weren't beating the other good teams in the American League or around Major League Baseball, which for the most part again was true. And then they ran up against a Houston team that was. Listen, Houston's a veteran ball club with a lot of guys who have had 3 World Series in 5 years, so they have a lot of experience in the postseason. Let's see. Now I wish somebody would reinvent the Cubs. Well, we're going to talk about the Cubs literally in seconds here. Anyway, the White Sox, they'll be in the postseason. I can't promise they're going to be in the World Series, but they're in a division right now that they should rule for the next 2 to 3 years minimum, just because the other teams are so bad. Speaking of the Cubs, Harry, and I don't know, do you have allegiance one way or another? Because I honestly am 50-50 down the middle.
Do I?
Yes.
Do I? Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Here, let me
You're a
me
White
do
Sox
this for
fan.
you.
Okay, that's fine.
Only good guys were black.
There you go. Okay, that's fine.
No, but I do. But you know what? I can say this, and please, you're going to get a chuckle out of this. But don't tell anybody. I'm a closet Cub fan. Okay, I root for both teams. Okay, I don't
That's
live
fine.
there anymore. And you know what made me change my mind? I just got to tell the quick story. When the White Sox went to the World Series under Ozzie Guillen, I was up in Chicago, and I remember walking by Wrigley Field, and on the marquee, it was during the playoffs. It says, "Go get them, White Sox, make us proud." And I was like, "Huh?" And I went, "Huh." Most cities don't even have a major league franchise, let alone 2. There's nothing wrong. I know if Fat Mike is watching this, he's throwing up at himself and he's throwing his drink up against the wall down there in Punta Cana. I don't care. See, I'm the one on the show with you, David. You can root for both teams. Yes, you
Well,
can.
yeah.
It's just fun to pick on them. So yes,
Well,
I'm a true White Sox fan. Go for it.
being in the broadcasting field, which I have been for a long time, I rooted for both because I vote with my pocketbook, like they say, because the better they did, the better I did. So that's the way I looked at it. And I also was taught very early on there is no cheering in the press box. So I learned how to be down the middle. All right, let's get to the Cubs. Obviously, they have a long ways to go to get back into any postseason conversation. They talk. Jed Hoyer did at the end of the season in his final press conference. They have a lot of money and they're going to spend it judiciously. And I hate that word when a baseball person talks about spending money judiciously. But they have the money. It's just whether they're going to do it. Now, they should, Harry, they should spend it on pitching because that's what their major need is more than anything else. Not that it's the only need. So I'm just going to run down some of the free agent pitchers. They're not going to go after the top guys, whether it's Clayton Kershaw, Robbie Ray, Max Scherzer, or even, well, I mean, there's a possibility with Rodon because you might get him at a little bit less because of his injury status, but his agent is Scott Boras, so that's a scary proposition. So I honestly see the Cubs spending money on pitching, but it might be more like guys like Alex Wood or John Gray or some of the other guys of that ilk, the second tier guys, which won't cost them as much money. What do you think?
Absolutely. Carlos Rodon makes a lot of sense to go to the other side, to go to the north side.
Mhm.
Like you said, they can get him a little bit on the cheap. And you know what? If they have a better conditioning and trainer, maybe he wouldn't get hurt as much as he has. But you know what? The last 3, 4 years, the guy's spent more time on the IR than he has actually pitched. But man, when he's on, he is tough to beat. That would be a great addition for the Cubs. I think the Cubs, honestly, if they stock some draft picks, and this team could be you know what? This team in the next 3 years could be really good, and probably in the fourth year making a contention again. You know, they have deeper pockets than they do on the south side. Okay. So if they do get some good draft picks and they have a really decent minor league system with all the players that they've let go and they start to pan out and you spend the money, oh my God, this team, you think the White Sox team is scary. This Cub team could be twice as scary in a couple of years.
Well, it could be, and whereas the White Sox have a stud, and I do mean stud, and he might ultimately be the best player in baseball, and I don't think that's really going too crazy and saying that Luis Robert could be the best player in baseball short term. The Cubs have a stud in their own who's going to. I don't know if he'll start the season with them, but it won't be very long. And talking about Brennan Davis, who has a meteoric rise through the minor leagues. He was at Double-A and destroyed that. He came up to Triple-A and immediately destroyed Triple-A pitching. And he might be on the Cubs, although I doubt it, to start the season. But I want to throw this one at you also, Harry, because I saw some rumors. I always read the rumors because sometimes they turn out to be true. And, you know, the Cubs still have Jason Hayward, 2 years, another $45 million that they owe him. And yeah, you want to get rid of him, but it's not that easy. And they're not going to eat $45 million, not the Cubs organization. So here's one. Let me tell you, if you were the GM, would you do this? Arizona, which is going nowhere. Once upon a time, Madison Bumgarner was one of the best pitchers in baseball. He did throw one of those BS 7-inning no-hitters last year, which thankfully was not considered a no-hitter. But besides that, he was pretty average. But he was, once upon a time, pretty damn good. He's owed 3 more years at $20 million. So it's pretty much a wash between the two. Would you take a chance on Madison Bumgarner maybe reinventing himself and finding himself and trying to pick him up for Jason Hayward? Would you do that?
Probably just for the mere fact of his presence in the dugout, because you're right. He's a shell of himself as a pitcher, but he's still going to be an innings eater. Okay. He's not going to flamethrow. He's not going to get anything by you, but the guy can still pitch. He's a very precise pitcher and he's still a really good pitcher. And for the young pitchers that are in the minors with the spot starts and everything, wow, what a role model to have there. I mean, I'm not kidding you. That would be something to get him. That would be a blessing for the Chicago Cubs because they're going to free up a lot of money. But I know something about Arizona. They don't like to spend money.
Well, they'd be saving money, though. I mean, Hayward is 2 times 22. Bumgarner is 3 times 20. So the Cubs would be taking on an extra year. I think it's a good gamble, to be honest with you. I don't know what his physical status is. If he's healthy, I think that once upon a time, this guy was the best pitcher in baseball when the Giants were winning World Series, which they did 3 while he was out there. I mean, he was automatic in the postseason, absolutely automatic. I don't know if he can regain that form or not. I'm not really sure. Let me go into the infield right now. The season ended with 2 guys who had pretty good seasons, surprisingly. At third was Patrick Wisdom. At first was Frank Schwindel. Schwindel was consistent from the moment he got into the lineup. Wisdom hit a lot of home runs, obviously, set a Cubs rookie record for home runs, but he also struck out a ton of times too. Because of where they are, they're not going anywhere next year. I'm okay with them both manning those same positions again and see what happens. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, actually, I am. I am okay with that. I think I think they're going to be just fine. You know, you have another comment up here, and it's not really indicting, but I think this is more of an opinion, and I think this really requires your expertise on this. This is I don't ever see the Ricketts spending again in a 200 million. What do you think?
I think that whoever wrote that, I didn't see the name.
His name is Bob.
Bob. Okay.
Bob from YouTube.
Bob, you might be right. You might be right about that because seemingly they have trimmed. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why they traded all those players they did at the trading deadline because they didn't want to give any of those guys the contracts that they wanted. So, yeah, in the foreseeable future, I don't see the Ricketts family spending that kind of money. That's why I suggested they're going to go for the second-tier free agent pitchers as opposed to the guys who are going to command the ridiculous money, meaning Kershaw, Scherzer, and even Robbie Ray, and even Rodon potentially. So, you know, Bob, you might be 100% correct about that. Yes.
You know, I think he could be correct on that for the short term. However, I do see this team in 3 years. Yeah, I could see the Ricketts spending. You know what? Listen, they got the money to do that. They know the excitement that this team brings to the entire city. That's right, the entire city of Chicago when they're winning. But it could be really, really fun. Bob also said Cubs only have one minor league player major league ready. Trade Hendricks and Contreras for prospects. They were going to do that last year, but they didn't. They wanted to keep Contreras, if I'm not mistaken, just for that leadership to go along for the rebuild. What do you think?
Well, I was going to even ask you this because I had this on my pad of paper. Wilson Contreras has got one more year on his contract. He could be in the same position at the trading deadline like Rizzo, Baez, and Bryant, where they could deal him or they could extend him. And I honestly think, and he became the leader in the clubhouse even before all those guys were dealt. And certainly he was the number one leader in that clubhouse after they were all dealt. I can honestly see, pending on personalities, I could see them extending him and signing him to a new deal. Hendricks is owed for what, another 3-4 years? I don't even know how long that contract goes. And I think they're going to need starting pitchers to eat innings. So I don't see either one of those guys going, and I honestly could see Contreras being extended. That's the way I look at it.
That's that's a great analogy on that, because I honestly thought that if not Hendricks, I don't have much of an opinion about Hendricks as I did Contreras. They do have 1 year left on his deal. Even at the trade deadline, they're not going to get as much for him because of this being his last year and then having to negotiate a contract. They would have got a lot more for Contreras last season when he already had another year to
Yep.
play, what they could have negotiated with him. So for those reasons, I say Contreras has zero chance of leaving this organization this year.
And Harry, also, they do have one really prized prospect in their minors at catcher, and unfortunately, he was injured a major portion of last year. I think the kid's name is Amaya. So he's not ready for them to deal. They would have nothing at that position, to be honest with you, if they traded him. So, like I said, for right now, I don't think Wilson Contreras is going anywhere. Picking up Wade Miley. Hey, listen, the Reds don't want to pay anybody, so the Cubs got him for $10 million. A little surprising that they're paying out that kind of money, but they need people to pitch. So 10 million doesn't go as far as it used to, Harry, apparently.
No. Did you know that, my combined income with Bill Gates is right around 20 billion? Okay. And by the way, for anybody that cares, it's third and goal. Kansas City has the ball, winning 17-14. And they didn't get it into the end zone. They're down at the 1 yard line with 7:46 left in the third quarter.
It's funny that you said that about you and Bill Gates, because Bill Winnington, who's, I've known for a long, long time also, a good friend, he always has the famous line, do you remember the time that Michael Jordan and I combined to score 57 points beating the Knicks at the Garden? And of course, Jordan had 55, and Winnington had the game-winning basket when Jordan was going down the lane, and he fed Winnington for an easy jam, to be honest with you, because they were double and almost triple teaming Michael. So, I mean, Bill Winnington is one of the all-time favorites. He's such a good guy.
You're ready for this? I still have the original newspaper clip from the Tribune when that was quoted.
There you go.
I'm not kidding you. I still have my old scrapbooks and everything. Kansas City scored. It is now 23-14. And assuming they don't kick the extra point. To kick the extra point, it'll be 24-14. They'll be up by 10.
How about the New Orleans kicker today missing 2 extra points? And that was the difference in the game. That's why they had to go for 2 at the end of the game to try and tie it. So they're not gimmies like they once upon a time were. Actually, there's one good rule change that I actually liked, because it was just basically an automatic point. Nowadays, it's not. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not 99.9% like it used to be.
I honestly think that the NFL should allow players to throw flags on the refs, but that's just for another subject, okay?
Or hip check them.
Or that's what I'm talking about, hip check. You realize that he got fined?
Yeah.
No, I just think about it. I mean, can't the NFL just one time go, hey, man, we
fucked up?
Yeah, really. I mean, why can't they do that just one time, Dave?
Well, I only hope that, what's his name? Marcus something or other. I mean, I didn't even know who he was until literally that play. I hope he appeals it, because he was fined like $5,500 or whatever it is. He didn't do anything.
Yeah, he looked at the opposing bench from 30 yards away as he's skipping and as he turned around. Now, look, the ref didn't throw the flag, when he was hip checking him. He was actually going for his
Yep.
flag, but he didn't have to hip check him. He just didn't.
No, he didn't. And shouldn't there be some kind of repercussion? We're getting off the beaten path. Shouldn't there be some kind of repercussion against the ref? Because he definitely stuck his hip out to make contact with the player.
Bob also says if Epstein would have started moving players before the 18 season, they would have been loaded with the top prospects. You know what? Shoulda, coulda, woulda. You
Yeah.
know, if I didn't lose, 6 games last week, I'd have an extra $3,000 sitting in my bank account.
100%. All right, one more thing before we get to our walk down memory lane segment, and ultimately the frosting on the cake, the stump the Harry segment at the end, the trivia questions. The Bulls. The Bulls have some really good ingredients. Unfortunately, with Vucevic going down, missing this whole West Coast trip because of COVID, they're going to struggle to win any games because of that. They're just undersized, and basketball is still a big man sport. I don't care what anybody says.
Right.
With Patrick Williams not playing and now Vucevic out for 5 or 6 or 7 games, whatever it ends up being, you're just undermanned in the middle. But I do like a lot of the acquisitions that Arturas Karnisovas made. They're a playoff contending team, Harry, but they're not a title contending team. Big difference between the two. And unfortunately, in getting Vucevic, they gave up a lot of draft capital. So those first round picks, which are important in football, are twice as important in basketball, in my opinion. And without those, I don't see them getting much better over the next year, 2 or 3.
You know what? I see this team actually getting a little bit better, and I'm going to tell you why. Because this team is going to get cohesive. Okay, momentum in sports. I like to use that word "mo." Okay, and the word "mo" is so important, especially in football. But in basketball, it's the same way because they're playing literally every other night, sometimes even every night for like a 2-week span. They can always trade. They can always add to their roster. They can always spend the money, But you're right. As far as draft capital, they could have some problems. Do I think this team's going to win an NBA championship? No. But I'm going to tell you one thing: they're going to be really exciting to watch. They're
They are.
8-4, and they're winning right now. They're up by 8 over the Clippers, and they're in LA right now.
Yeah, no, they're definitely a much, much, much better team than they were even a year ago. There's no question about that. But, as they always say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And ultimately, when you finally get to, the end of March into April and even beyond that, it's matchups. And I just don't think they have enough. They're going to have to, infuse more talent, even though they've upgraded tremendously to get to that next level. They need more talent. And I don't know where it's going to be coming from because they don't have those first round picks going forward. Very unfortunate. All right, Harry, I like to do this because I've had so many experiences in my travels covering sports over the last God knows how many years. So I like to do this walk down memory lane segment, and feel free to either chime in on what I'm about to talk about or an experience that you had. But
Sure.
I used to cover boxing. They used to send me out, and I think HBO paid the freight to cover some of the big boxing fights out in Vegas. And one of the fights that they sent me out to, HBO picked up the tab. God bless them. Nice suite at what was it? The MGM or someplace. I can't even remember where it was. Shane Mosley and Winky Wright. That was the fight that I was out there for. And I would do some shows for a couple days out there, then cover the fight and then come home. But one of the nights while I was out there, do you remember Bert Sugar?
No.
Oh my God. Bert Sugar was you got to Google him and look him up.
No, I do remember. Go ahead.
Bert Sugar was he's now departed, but was such a character and really was just so front and center in all boxing. Okay. I think he worked mostly for Ring Magazine, which is a very famous publication for boxing.
Right.
And he would, very old time guy, smoked the cigar, wore the fedora, blah, 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 ugly sports coats. So he was the full-fledged boxing guy, but he was number one. He owned Las Vegas. So he took us around. First of all, he just cajoled us with stories left and right. And we went out with him one night, and I was mesmerized because if there's one sport that I think I love more than any other, it's boxing, believe it or not, even though I'm a hoops junkie and I love everything else as well. But boxing fascinates me because of the characters and how dirty of a business it really is. So it just fascinates me. And he was so front and center, and he took us around. He got us into some parties that I had no chance I would have gotten into.
Well,
And
when they seen who he was,
right.
for obvious reasons, this guy reminded me of one of the Untouchables. I remember
Yes.
exactly who you're
Yes.
talking about. He
Yes.
walked around. If he said something, like the room would stop and go, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah." Bert just talked.
Yeah.
He looks like someone you would see in the movies. Go ahead. I have
Yeah,
a
no,
propensity of doing
it's
that.
you're absolutely right. I'm thinking of the Untouchables, Elliot Ness. Or I mean, he wasn't back from the 20s, but he was just had that mystique about him, that aura about him, that he just owned the room when he walked into anything in the boxing society, if you will. And it was just so cool to basically tug at his coat one night and go around. And I remember we went to some party and there was some private elevator in one of the hotels. I don't even know which one it was in retrospect, but we went up and there was bodyguards to get into the elevator, and there was bodyguards once you got off, and they looked at me and like, who the hell is this guy? Bert goes, yeah, he's with me. He's okay. And you know what? It was like, it was so cool. It was so cool.
I could see David going, "Yeah, that's right. I'm with him."
That's right. It was like a tenderfoot Boy Scouts being with the Eagle Scout. That's what it was really like that night. So anyway, that was my walk down memory lane segment. All right, now it's time. And I know you've been waiting all week since I told you about this. This is the Stump the Harry
Oh,
contest.
stump the
Trivia
Greek.
questions. Some are easy, some are not. I'll be
Okay.
honest with you.
All
Okay.
right. All right. All right.
All right,
Let's
so we'll
do it.
start. We'll start off with a pretty easy one. At least I think it is. Who holds the Bears' single season record for passing yards?
My man, Jay Cutler.
No,
What? Oh,
no.
single season.
Yes,
Was that Eric Kramer?
it was Eric Kramer. That is correct. 3,838 yards. The year was 1995. He had a great year. Great year.
That's
Eric
right. It was
Kramer.
it. And he was hurt for a couple of games that year too.
That part I don't remember, but he, good guy. All right, bonus part. Where did he go to college?
Eric Kramer? I have
Yeah.
no idea. He had to probably be a tiny 10 guy.
He went to North Carolina State.
Ah, okay. So he's on the
North
East.
Carolina State. All right, you got that one. You got that one. All right, here's the next one. And the first spade of questions here are all about the Bears because I know you're such a Bear. Bert Sugar's the Les Grobstein of boxing. I don't know if that was a compliment or not, to be honest with you. All right, the next one also about the Bears. William Perry's nickname, of course, was the Fridge, right?
Yep, the refrigerator.
But Dan Hampton had another nickname for him. What was it?
He was the biscuit.
There you go.
Because he was a biscuit just shy of 350.
There you go. William Perry, I think he weighed technically, they had him listed at 302, even though he was more than 302. Yeah, like
330, baby, is what he came in with.
yeah, but nowadays William Perry would almost be small,
I know.
compared to some of the other guys. I got a quick William Perry story because when they were in Platteville one of the years that I was covering them, and I went up to Platteville for like 3 or 4 weeks of the training camp, which is like the end of the world as far as I'm concerned. But back in those days, we would eat with the players, which is good and bad. Good because, you'd be around them, they get to know you, yada, yada. Bad because I couldn't believe how much these guys ate. And William Perry lived up to all the characterizations of him. He would come with a tray like this, Harry. I'm not kidding. That would be stuffed with 2 or 3 full chickens and all the trappings and 3 or 4, big things of drink and whatever. And there I am eating my, ham and cheese sandwich or something like that. And then they go out and practice like an hour or 2 later. I never could understand that. Never.
Yep, that's a really good story. Can I share one story before you go to
Please.
the next question?
Please.
Many years ago, I used to sell programs for a youth football league in Oldsmar, Florida here, which is just west of Tampa, but east of Clearwater, north of St. Pete, and south of Tarpon. And they would allow us to get to the stadium at the old Sombrero in Tampa Stadium 2 hours before game time. And what our jobs were to do were to sell the programs for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you had to work midway through the first quarter. After that, you could sit anywhere you wanted to within the stadium. But what was really cool is we would be allowed to go on the field, talk to the players, and I was just in hog heaven, brother, when they were playing the Bears, and I got to meet Walter Payton and Willie Galton, Jim McMahon, and some of the defensive players. But the funny part of the story was this. I'm walking through the stadium, and one of the concession stands were open in the north end zone. And I see this guy with a newspaper all the way up to his face. And there's not very many people in the stadium at the time. I get the little side profile of him, and I walk up, Mr. Butkus? I says, sir, she says, well, he was working for the radio stations. He was doing color, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we were just talking back and forth. I was a huge Bear fan, loved him when I was a kid, yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden, all these people are like, oh my God, that's Dick Butkus. And as soon as they seen him, they started coming up, and he goes, thanks a lot, kid. I can't even eat my goddamn hot dog and drink a soda. And he just sticks his thing under here, and he's just walking away with his limp. True story. Loved me for a minute, hated me because I made him pull the newspaper off his face.
That sounds just like Dick Butkus, who, by the way, was the most ferocious football player. I was a kid watching him growing up also. Just a ferocious, animalistic player, and I say that in all complimentary sense. Unbelievable.
I remember he hit a center one time so hard, it knocked him into the quarterback and into the running back, and just he made the tackle that way. Never touched the guy.
Yeah,
he hit the center so hard.
I might remember that might have been Mick Tingelhoff, and he knocked him into whoever the court. It could have been Tarkenton for all I remember.
It was against Minnesota.
I mean, he was just unbelievable. Okay, this next one, another semi-easy question. The year the Bears won the Super Bowl, the final was 46-10 over New England. Who scored the final points for the Bears?
It was Reggie Phillips, if I'm not mistaken. Who was it?
It was a safety. Who was it?
Well, Reggie Phillips was a safety.
No, they scored on a safety.
Oh, Mike Hartenstein.
No.
No, who the hell was it? It was a defensive lineman who got him in the end zone.
That's correct.
Don't tell me. Give me the number. Give me the number.
I don't remember what his number was. I don't know. He was a backup, obviously.
No, Hartenstein didn't play in 85 and 86. He retired in 84 when Al Harris and Todd Bell held out, which, by the way, was the best defense that was ever assembled in Chicago. Was the year prior to they went into the Super Bowl. But that's for another subject. Who was it that hit? It wasn't Al Harris. It wasn't Richard Dent. It wasn't Dan Hampton or Steve McMichael.
It was a backup defensive lineman.
I know, and I'm trying to remember this guy's name. I could see him.
It's a trivia question. Tell me when you're ready. I'll give it to you.
You got an initial?
HW.
Yes, I still can't bring it out. I know who you're talking about. You got to tell me. It's driving me nuts.
Well, it's not Henry Winkler. I'll tell you that.
I know it's not. Tell me who it was.
It's Henry Wachter.
Wachter. I used to call him the Waxter because I couldn't pronounce his last name. You're absolutely correct.
Henry Wachter with the safety making it 46-10. Absolutely.
Oh, that was good.
All right, this next one. Gale Sayers, another one of my boyhood, heroes. I mean, he was unbelievable. Unbelievable. He once upon a time became an athletic director after his playing days. Where was he the athletic director?
Oh, I have no idea on this one.
Okay, well, I'll tell you why I know this one firsthand, because it was the college that I was at, and I used to interview him all the time in the position that I was while I was at Southern Illinois.
Oh, really?
Yes. Gale Sayers became what are they saying here? Bob is saying, my dad used to take me when I was a little boy to go watch Dick Butkus practice at CVS High School. Very good.
Wow.
Gale Sayers was actually the associate athletic director at Kansas, his alma mater, after his playing days. And then Southern Illinois needed a new athletic director, and I'm sure they brought him in to raise money, obviously, because of his name, which he did. And and he was still only like 34, 35 years old because he had to retire early because of, the knee surgery and everything like that. So he was still young and in shape and, still Gale Sayers as far as I was concerned. God bless his, rest his soul, also passed away semi-recently. So we used to see and talk to Gale Sayers in his capacity as athletic director at Southern Illinois. What a treat that was for a young reporter here. So Gale Sayers at Southern Illinois. Okay, let's see here. All right, here we go. The year the Cubs won the World Series, not too long ago now. Somebody saying hello to you, Harry.
Hey, Peter, how are you, buddy?
Somebody saying hello to you, or is that Peter? Okay, so who led the Cubs in saves the year they won the World Series? In the regular season, of course.
Why do I not know this? This has got to be a trick question.
Not really.
You wouldn't throw me a layup like this.
It's not really a trick question.
All right, who was it?
Okay, I will tell you that once Chapman came over, he became the closer, obviously.
Correct.
And he closed and saved 16 games. But before that, Hector Rondon was the closer, and then he got, put into the position like Kimbrel was attempted to.
How many did Hector get?
He had 18.
You see, I thought it was going to be a trick question because I do remember they ended up, leasing, a pitcher for that.
Yeah, Chapman. I mean, they won the World Series. They gave up, some real draft capital, so to speak, in young players, but they won the World Series. Now, I will tell you, there was only one other pitcher that season, this is even before Chapman got there, that had more than one save. You want to take a shot at who that might be?
Repeat the question.
Again, that same year, they won the World Series in 2016. Rondon had 18 saves. Chapman, when he came over, had 16. Only one other reliever had more than one save. Who would that have been?
Peter Blake, you ought to be chiming in this ear to help me out because I'm feeling like a fool. I don't know who it is.
Well, you'll know the name, of course. Carl Edwards Jr.
It was Carl Edwards Jr. I never would have guessed that. I never, ever would have guessed that.
Carl Edwards Jr. had good stuff. Unfortunately, he ultimately didn't pan out, and they traded him away. And I don't think he did well even after they traded him away. And I don't even know if he was on a roster at the end of last season. I don't even remember. Okay, let's see. All right, one more with the Cubs. That same season, they had 5 pitchers with double-digit victories in the regular season.
William Hendricks, John Lester.
Who are they?
I can come up with Hendricks and Lester, if I'm not mistaken.
Those are 2.
I'm not going any further from there. Wait a minute. Yes, I can. You do know it's an hour later than where I'm at, right?
Yeah, I know. That's why you're falling asleep on me now.
I'm not falling asleep on you. I don't remember. Tell me who it was. This is awesome.
Okay, Arrieta, of course.
That's right. Jake Arrieta. I was there for his game against the Atlanta Braves. I was the idiot wearing an A.J. Pierzynski White Sox shirt for that game when he was catching for him. But go ahead. That's another story.
John Lackey.
At
11. And then the guy that people don't remember, and he was one of the guys who I gravitated towards in the locker room, Jason Hamill.
Really?
Yeah, he had 15 wins that season. He had a great year.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Jason Hamill's had 15 wins, ultimately got traded, I think, to Kansas City the following season or something like that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I grabbed Jason Hamill's was big, into music. Mm-hmm. And, the long story with starting pitchers are they pick out the pregame music that plays in the clubhouse.
Right.
The only reason I finally learned about who Pearl Jam was is because Kerry Wood, who was at the time on the Cubs staff, we're going back now 20-some odd years, Kerry Wood would always play Pearl Jam before games. And I used to look up at the speaker and go, man, this is a really good band. Who the hell is this? Kerry Wood introduced me to Pearl Jam. That's a long story short. Jason Hamill's was very eclectic with his music, but it was always rock and roll. Some of these guys pick reggae, some pick rap. Country. I'll get that in a double yuck. Lester and Lackey, country music up the yin yang. Ugh.
I'd rather watch grass grow than watch listen to country music.
I'm with you. Hey, to each their own, as I always say, just not for me. But Jason Hamill's always had cool rock and roll. So that's why I like Jason Hamill's.
That's really a cool story. I got a trivia question for you.
Okay.
What college did Roberto Hernandez, former closer of the Chicago White Sox, 17 years, and how many saves did he have in his career?
Well, he had over 300, or it might have been 300 on the nose, if I'm not mistaken.
Close.
302,
It's
303,
like 326. You
320.
know what?
Okay.
I got his baseball sitting right over here. That's another story for itself. But go
Yeah,
ahead. What college did he go to?
I don't know what college he went to, but Roberto was one of the all-time great, great, great guys that, I think I've told you the story before, that we gravitated towards. Even if he blew a save at the end of the game, which wasn't often, obviously, he would still be front and center and talk to the media. And as a journalist, as a reporter, you always had to appreciate somebody like that. So I don't know. You have to tell me what college he went to.
He went to University of South Carolina, Aiken, and they actually named the stadium after him. And there's another part to this. It's not just a trivia question. It leads me to a little story, which is pretty cool. Roberto has two young boys. Okay, they're not young anymore. I mean, they're one's grown up, and that was Roberto Hernandez Jr., who, by the way, his godfather was Ozzie Guillen. Okay, Roberto Hernandez Jr. had a pretty bright future in baseball, not like his father did. Okay, and he decided of all the colleges in the entire country to go to that he wanted to follow dad's footsteps and says, you know what? I'm going to go to the University of South Carolina. And Roberto's going, son, maybe you should pick another college. Why? I could handle it. Son, they named the stadium after me, and your name is Roberto Hernandez Jr. That didn't work out too well for him. It just didn't work out too well for him. But it's just so surreal. That's also a really fun story. And the reason why I know about that, as you know, I mean, I've known Roberto for quite a few years. He's a really, really nice guy, lives relatively close to where I'm at down here. And, he's just a super, super guy. And he let me tell you something. That was a great compliment that you posed to him, because we could be having lunch or dinner somewhere and people will walk out and they're like, oh, that's Roberto Hernandez. And they're like, well, why would they know him in Tampa? Because he had 160 plus saves for Chicago, and he's the all-time saves leader here in Tampa. He was the original closer for the Rays, and people remember him. And he's so nice. He could be in the middle of his dinner, and he will make sure that he's still talking to everybody. And one time I said, Roberto, doesn't that kind of bother you, like in the middle of dinner? And he goes, you know what? It'll bother me when they forget my name.
Yeah, no, he was definitely one of the all-time good guys. Absolutely. All right, next time I promise I'll have White Sox questions, but I got one more Cub question.
Okay, go for it.
For the year they won again in 2016, so in a lot of people's minds it's still fresh. There were 4 catchers who were behind the plate that season. 4 catchers. Three of them you'll get. The fourth one I highly doubt, unless you're an absolute trivia expert.
I'm not going there. You got to tell me which one it was. My brain is fried.
Okay, I'll just tell you in order. Miguel Montero had 71 games, and he had a big grand slam in that postseason. David Ross, who had a home run in the final game in Game 7 against Cleveland.
By the way, he was my favorite catcher on the Cubs.
He was David Ross, who's now the manager. You look at him through a different lens nowadays, as you did when he was a player, obviously. But Ross was always another go-to guy, because he would always, even if there were problems, David Ross would command that clubhouse and he would talk to all the reporters. David Ross had the second most games behind the plate at 58. A young Wilson Contreras back then, 57 games, and a guy, and honestly, I didn't even remember him, Tim Federowicz. Tim Federowicz was behind the plate 12 games that season.
You would have got me on that one.
I don't even remember him. He must have come up late. That's all I can remember. I don't know.
You would have got me on that one. Absolutely would have got me on that one.
I promise next time I'll have some White Sox questions.
That would be awesome. I had a lot of fun tonight.
Well, thank you, Harry. I appreciate you joining us. Harry also, by the way, produced this show, because I'm a neophyte and an idiot at the same time, and I don't know how to maneuver how to do this. So Harry was the capable and able person to do this.
Oh my God, it was my pleasure. And are we done? You want me to go?
Yeah, we'll go. Well, no, we'll both sign off at the same time here. Again, Harry's got a show, Over Under with Harry the Greek. It's on Friday nights right here on 1252. Go ahead and brag a little bit, because you're entitled to do so. Harry knows his way around wagering. Go ahead.
My name is Harry the Greek. I have a show on 1252 Sports, Friday evening, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. my time, because I'm down here in the beautiful Tampa Bay area. We talk a little bit about gambling. We talk about your Chicago Bears and a lot of games around the National Football League. I have a co-host by the name of Peter Blake, and you never know. It might be a David Schuster one week or a Fred Hubner or a Fat Mike. You never know. I only get the really good guys on my show, but I really appreciate you letting me come on tonight.
No, I appreciate you being here, Harry. Much appreciated. And anyway, I don't know if I'm going to be here next Sunday night. Normally Sunday night, 8:30 local time, Central. I'm on, but I think I'm at a Bulls game a week from tonight, if I'm not mistaken. They play the Knicks, so I'll probably be there. So we'll figure out another time. But normally I will be here on Sunday nights. Again, next week might be a little bit different. But again, for Harry, for myself, we appreciate you listening and joining us in. And we'll talk to you shortly down the road.
Have a good night, everybody.